Welcome back, everyone, to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your coach this evening. So if you saw the headline, we're going to be talking about world news today. And oh boy, what's going on in the world? What is not going on in the world? But I want to take some time to focus on the main aspects of what's going on, because there is two correlating or two very similar traits that is happening across the world. And I want to talk about that and how it affects mindset, how it affects future, etc. So typically I would give a rant and I would talk about the mindset and how it influences it and then back up my data. But today I want to show you the data first. So I'm approaching how you learn, how you see the truth, right? What's going on, and you can use your own knowledge, your own wisdom, and then have your own opinion at the end of this episode, right? Then the podcast, you can say, okay, oh my God, this is a problem. Oh, it's not really a big problem. It's not going to affect me, right? Whatever you decide, that's going to be up to you, right? There's no reason why you need to be living in fear if it's not going to affect you. And for many people, they live in a little box. They live in their state, their country, their continent, and they don't leave. Not many people go out of their hometown. They stay in their hometown for their whole life, and they might go somewhere for like a weekend trip or something like that, but nothing extravagant, like going to Greece, going to Antarctica, anything, right? So people are going to be just stuck where they are. And it's not that they have to be adventurous. It's just that is what they are conditioned into. So let's get into some news, and then I'm going to be talking about that because that's going to be important for today's show. So here we are on BBC News. You can go to bbc.com and you can, of course, type in world news. So there's a few things going on. One of the common news stories that I'm seeing in all the news that we're going to be talking today is going to be talking about climate change, right? So climate talks into over time as nations near deal, right? Because there was a climate summit where world leaders came together to talk about how they can further prevent climate change, right? So global warming. And so that's a big deal, right? So making top news, people want to know about that, right? Because they're worried, right? They don't know what's tomorrow going to hold, their future is going to hold, because if they don't fix something now, then something could possibly happen down the future, right? And we have two types of mindsets for that. First, we can say, well, that's not our problem. That's going to be 2 generations down problem. Or we can say, okay, well, how can we fix this? Right? So being more proactive. And then we get into some gossip stuff where it's talking about people being charged from Congress. There's some news about Britney Spears, how she got her life back and now she can control her money and her own finances and her own life now. There's talk about COVID surging and that there's going to be more lockdowns and racism. So that is basically what is happening on BBC News. And then let's head over to CNN News and see if we see any similarities. So one of things that they talk about, of course, is going to be, well, they actually have a lot of different news on CNN. It's not simply just COVID, racism. It's more so a little bit about everything, right? So there's going to be a migrant crisis. There's going to be talking about the rainforest, whether it be for the animals or for the trees. China's history rewriting. There's a border crisis again in Poland. So they're talking a lot about border crises now that I'm looking at it. There's a crisis of people migrating to other countries. And is this a good thing, right? Is this a bad thing? And we're going to talk talk a little bit about that in a minute. We're going to talk a little bit about that, especially at the end, right? Because if someone's moving to a different country or different location to try to have a better life, to maybe start over, who are we to say, hey, you need to stay where you are and be miserable, right? And I'm all for people moving to where they want to be. Or if they want to move to America, they can move to America. They want to move to, someplace in Europe or over in the East, go for it, right? But I'm all about doing it legally, doing it right. If you're going to sneak into a country, unless you're seeking asylum, things like that, then it becomes a little bit less political, right? Because at this point, it's just my opinion, right? My opinion is going to say, hey, you can do it, just do it right, right? So I'm sure most people think that way, because if they're going to say, well, just break the law, you'll be fine. How does that make sense? Because if you think about it, those same people are going to be pushing for certain laws, and they're going to say that it's not fair if they don't follow this or that law. So it's a little bit of hypocrisy too that we're going to be talking about. So heading over to NBC News. And here we have more migrant crisis, seeking asylum from other places, and talk about the vaccine. And let's see if we can find, and more climate control. All right, so that is what NBC News is talking about. And let's head over to ABC International News, see what they're talking about. They're talking about some crises that happened in Haiti, about some heavy rains that killed a few people in India. There was something going on in Mexico around Cancun. So that if you're not familiar with Cancun is a place where many tourists go for vacation. There's many resorts. And so there was some incidents happening over there with apparent gang violence. Then we have some more climate summit. Then we talk about just some regular local news that is going to be pertaining maybe more so if you lived in the area than if you just wanted to familiarize yourself with everything that's going around the world, because there's so much information that's going around in the world and it's going to be hard to keep track of it. So we do have to be cognizant of what we put our focus to. And if we want to find out what is going on in the world and be constantly aware of the news, it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those, great things that videos like, and also share. And if you are familiar with my past interviews, Grace Benkovic, she actually spoke about this, how people have the world in front of them right now. They have their cell phones, they have their computers or laptops, and they can go on and they can find any type of drama, any type of fear mongering that could be going on. And it is at our fingertips. And it's important for us to understand that, because if we're going to simply say, okay, well, I'm bored, let me see what's going on in the world so I can be worried, that's counterintuitive to making sure you're doing the right thing, because now we're just worried and we're going to be stuck worrying for the next 4 or 5 hours while we're on our phone. And then after, where did that time go? So heading over to theguardian.com, they are also talking about news about Britney Spears. They're talking about more about the Trump thing with Steve Bannon. There was some issues or something talking about the boosters for COVID. So they're talking about, hey, if you don't get the booster, there's a chance that we can surge again, meaning just the numbers go up again. And if numbers go up again, of course, the deaths are going to go up again. So they're urging people to get the booster. All right. So that's going to be from theguardian.com. And let's head over to the New York Times. And New York Times is going to be talking about Putin and an alliance, more border crisis. Then they talk about some other stories that are not going to be pertinent to what we are looking for. the other big thing they're talking about is, of course, vaccines again. How now they're basically putting out a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So it's not a pandemic of COVID, it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Because, sorry, I almost got into it. Let me keep going on with the news and then we can break down all the news. So heading over to globalnews.ca, and they're going to be talking about more of COVID and what to expect for the winter season. Then they're going to be talking more about Steve and Brittany and about the booster shots. There's a story about the Rittenhouse trial. We can talk about that too a little bit, but that's not really world news. That's more local news for America. And talk a little bit about investing, Canada, right? And then we get into Fox News. And Fox News is going to be more so about what's happening in America. Because Fox News, their primary audience is going to be Americans. But I do want to just point this out because here we are talking about similar traits or similar things that are happening. So we're talking about the mandates, the vaccine stuff. We're talking about the Rittenhouse trials, racism. All that comes into play. So let's break down all that news. So that's a lot of news to take in, right? And we did it very quickly because I don't want to be a news anchor and bore you with all the stories that are happening in the world. But I do want to make you aware of those stories before we begin. Because if you're not aware of them, how can we talk about them? And I want to talk, how do those stories make you feel, right? And if you're in chat, you can always just tell me how they make you feel. If you're watching the show after hours, just tell me in the comment section, how do these stories make you feel? Do they make you feel hopeful? Do they make you feel nervous, timid, positive, negative? How do those stories make you feel? And for most people, those stories are going to make you antsy, right? For better terms. They're going to make you feel uncomfortable. They're going to make you feel like you're helpless because you're one person, right? And of course, you can do your part because that's what they say, do your part. Get the vaccine, get the booster. Okay, you did your part. But even if you do your part, how can you force someone else to do their part? Their part. And now I'm doing air quotes. Because just because someone tells you to do your part or that they need to do their part, that doesn't constitute for anything, right? If I tell you to do your part and become successful and you don't do it, what happens? Nothing. You carry on for your day, rightfully so. But it's not until we stick an agenda to something, now it gets traction. Now it gets focus. Cancel culture crew comes in. We have world news, mainstream news, all of that comes in and says, hey, now we're going to demonize you if you don't think, do, or act how we want. And that is not going to be a proper way to lead people, right? Because you can lead people to fear and you can string them along, but eventually the people rise up. People become brave. They say, no more. I'm done. Perfect example. If you're in a relationship with someone and the relationship is not going the right way, but they use fear tactics to keep you in the relationship, do you say, oh, well, they're using fear tactics to keep me in a relationship, I might as well stay because I don't want to be afraid? No, you get the heck out. But when our news does it, when our government does it, and they use fear tactics, we say, oh, well, we have to follow them. They're the leaders. It's very interesting how we can give certain people more power because at the end of the day, we're in charge of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And you can have your opinion. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm all for you doing everything that is lawfully correct in your country, right? And if you don't like where you are, you can move. right? There's a lot of people moving with the whole immigration thing. And those people are moving from typically places that have maybe good healthcare, education, things like that. Maybe they don't have that type of stuff, right? There's both sides, right? They come from communism or they come from being in a third world country. So they want something better for their life. So what do? They flee for a dream of having a better tomorrow, for having a better life, or to create a family that can be better off than they were. And there's nothing wrong with that. We talked about the three main things that are happening in world news. First is COVID. Second is going to be climate control, global warming, all of that climate talk and everything pertaining to that. And the last thing is going to be racism. Okay. And we're going to tackle climate control first. Then we're going to talk about COVID. And then it's going to end up with racism because it actually ties together. So climate control, right? It's something that was really big in the Obama years, maybe even sooner, right? They want to go green. They want to not use gasoline, like fossil fuels, things like that anymore or as much. But it's almost hypocritical, right? Because if we think about it, how do we charge our electronic batteries? Typically with fuel, right? It could be a coal plant. It could be natural gas, whatever, all right? And I'm not saying that we can't add more hydroelectric power. We can't add more solar power. I'm not saying that it's not possible because it is very possible. But the fact that we still use coal to charge up our Teslas, that's counterintuitive to having a Tesla. We're trying to save the world, but yet the same thing we use to power our car is destroying the world. People don't see that. They see, oh, well, my car doesn't need gasoline, so I'm doing my part. And it all comes back to doing your part, because if you feel like you're doing the right thing, guess what? There's nothing wrong with it. You don't see the other side. And I was talking to one of my mentors, a great guy, very smart guy. He's wildly successful. And him and I just had a conversation. And the conversation went like this. Not everyone can see a step ahead. Okay, so if they can't even see a step ahead, how can they see 10 steps ahead, 20 steps ahead? And that's what I do for many of my clients. I help them see 20 steps ahead, 50 steps ahead, whatever they need, right? Because sometimes they only need a few steps ahead. But then there's going to be some people who need to look far out to reach their goal. Great example. I have a client, 300 pounds. They want to lose weight. Okay, well, what's your goal weight? Okay, they say 190. So we need to lose 110 pounds. What would be a feasible set date to give them? Can I say, oh, well, next week we're going to knock out that 110 pounds and you're going to be looking good? Can I do that for them? No, it's not going to be good if they lose that amount of weight in 1 week, right? Yeah, of course you can go for surgery. Of course you can starve yourself, right? But even if you starve yourself, you're not going to lose that much weight in just a week. So we have to be realistic in our goals and our way of thinking, right? Because we have this entitlement mindset where everyone wants now, gimme. But the world is not now, gimme. If it's that, everyone's going to be without. So you just have to come to a conclusion of how you want to operate. And then once you operate that way, make sure you know what the steps happen after your action. So yeah, you have a Tesla, you don't have to get gasoline anymore, but your Tesla charger is still using fossil fuels or whatever, gas, coal to power to give you electricity. I mean, you might be in a region where you have a dam that powers your home, or you have solar power that powers your home, or maybe even windmills that power your home. Okay, so now you're doing your part. And there's nothing wrong. But for the majority of people, they're not. They are just blind by what comes next. And then they're blindsided when something happens. Oh, I can't believe this happened. This is so crazy. Everything sucks right now. My life. Because they didn't see ahead. And that's where people are when it comes to the climate control. They can't see ahead. And I'm not saying that there is a problem, that there's not a problem, right? That is your perspective. For me, if you want to fight for using less fuel, using more electricity that is going to be renewable, so that's talking about solar power, wind, water, and not using coal or fossil fuels to fuel your Teslas. Okay, now we can have that conversation. I'm all for that conversation. But if we're going to be hypocrites and say, well, I'm driving around in Tesla and my house is energy efficient, okay. But if fossil fuels are used to run your home, probably hypocrite. Because I know where I live, I have the option to pay more to get in electrical service that is full green, right? So this fully renewable. It costs more money, but I'm doing my part. So yeah, we can save a few bucks and destroy the world, or we can say, you know what? I'm going to pay a few extra dollars and go green. Okay. Now we're being more realistic in our fight, because it is a fight. Don't use cars are, destroying the world, and we need to do something before the ice caps melt. Okay. All right. So that's making news. Next thing is making news is going to be COVID. And COVID's a big deal. It's a big deal. People make it a bigger deal than it needs to be, though. Right? And I understand it's a virus. It killed some people. There's been deadlier viruses, right? If we go back to just history and how we can see how certain plagues or viruses destroyed the world. And here we have COVID, right? And how we're making it a big deal, which for you, it could be a big deal, right? But how they do it is what I want to talk to you about today. If someone is going to be telling you to do something and you don't want to do it, and if you don't do it, you're ostracized, is that positive? Is that conducive to a healthy relationship? I don't think so. Let's use your relationship, for example, or a friend, whatever you want. If your friend says, hey, if you don't give me $10, I'm not going to like you. Okay. Well, it's not about money, Michael. Okay, great. It's not about money then. If you don't allow me to sleep on your sofa every single day, I'm going to be mad at you. Oh, well, it's not about invading someone's personal space. Okay. If you don't allow me full access to your rights, I'm going to be mad at you. Well, I have my own rights and I have my own opinion. Okay. That is what's happening. People have their own rights, their own opinion, and it's not being honored. I can have my opinion. I can say what I want. I can do what I want. There might be consequences. But if I do something and I know I'm right, or if I don't even feel an ounce of remorse, you're not getting an apology from me. If anything, I'm going to say you're being a little bitch. That's it. Grow up. But guess what? At the end of the day, you have to make sure you're good. And you can complain about the unvaccinated. You can complain about the mandates. You can complain about the upcoming surge because it's winter now and this will be flu season. We can complain, right? Or we can take action. What actions can we take right now to help us with COVID, right? Number one, turn off the news. Look around you. Go to the grocery store. Do you see people sick and dying? Probably not. You might hear maybe someone sneeze, someone cough, and you might run, right? Maybe you have your mask on and you might feel confident in your abilities having a mask on and not catch a virus. Okay, right? You might have a Purell in your pocket and you say, you know what, I'm going to sanitize my hands and I'm going to be A-okay. You might, right? We can definitely take precautions. We can definitely be more cautious. But at the end of the day, COVID exists because we allow it to exist. Humans created COVID, and now humans are keeping COVID alive. It's similar to how we ruminate on our thoughts. If you have a negative thought in your mind, thoughts are meant to last 90 seconds. 90. If a thought or a feeling lasts more than that, so we're talking about feelings more so than thoughts. It's just that sometimes we have a feeling and then we put it in our thoughts. If we ruminate on a feeling past 90 seconds, that is a choice. So if we're thinking about COVID and the detriment is causing to our life, that's a choice. That's your choice. Similar to how the government said, oh, let's flatten the curve, let's flatten the curve, let's flatten the curve. Give them 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Oh, it's going to probably take 3 months now. Time is not renewable. All right. This is not water, wind, sun. Our time is not a renewable resource. So if we're going to give it away willy-nilly to whoever says we can or can't do something, we should fight that. And I'm not saying to take up your pitchforks and start a riot. I am saying be very cautious to how you delegate your time and who you allow to impact your time. I encourage people to rid themselves of their limiting beliefs. And Mark Noblin and I, we had an interview last Friday, I believe. We talked about those limiting beliefs. If you grew up, first world country, you went to school, right? And that school most likely had a plan or a curriculum, a foundation for you to learn. If you are one of those people, you have a limiting mindset right now. And if you did the work to get rid of your limiting mindset, good on you. If you had parents that were supportive, that were going to be supportive and positive to you and helped you get rid of your limiting mindset or allowed you never to develop a limiting mindset or to take priority on a limiting mindset status, good on them, right? You need to tell mom and dad, thank you. Because the amount of people coming up who are so blind, crazy. And the number can't be determined simply by saying, well, 60%. But I'm almost 100% certain we'll do COVID survival rate numbers, 99.7% sure that you can get out of a limiting mindset, but you don't even realize you're there. People don't realize that they have a limiting mindset. They just go on with their day. They just carry on with their day and then they are fed what they are fed, right? And those things could be lies. It could be some of the truth, right? Like we can tell the truth also, but we need to be focused more so on what we want to believe. If you don't want to believe that you need a booster or that mandates help or we need a quarantine, that's your choice, right? Believe it. Don't allow someone to say, well, there's going to be consequences for your choice. Okay, well, how about this? There's going to be consequences for your choice too, because there's always going to be karma. It's always going to be good and bad. It's yin and yang. Because if you're going to have an action, there's going to be a reaction too. But what I help my clients with, what I steer people into is not to react, but to act. And there's a difference. I have brown skin, right? You might say, oh, you're dirty. You're a brown skin guy. Oh, right? they might say some derogatory names at me. They might call me a Nazi because I believe maybe a certain way, or maybe a freedom patriot or whatever, right? They might call me leftist or right, a right person, because I can do two things. I can have them say something to me and I react, or I can have them say something to me and I go, okay. And then I choose my own action, because my reaction is not going to be determined by what they tell me, by what they say to me. Now, of course, some things need reactions. If someone is pushing you, maybe they hit you, they're probably going to get hit back. And we have laws for that. In Texas, stand your ground. Castle doctrine. You can use greater or equal force. Okay. Well, if someone does something to me, it's going to be double. I already know that. It's not a threat. It's just what I determined for myself. And similar how I determine the rest of my life, whether it be with the vaccine, whether it be political, whether it be how I'm going to take in being restricted to leave my home or to go out certain places, like essential worker type of thing. Look what they did to essential workers. They said, you're an essential worker, you're heroes. And then now they're throwing them to the wayside. Look at New York. Sorry, this is world news. But it is cause and effect. And it's going to keep on happening if we keep on letting it happening. And now what COVID did was it created a divide in how people act. It is a modern day segregation. You might not see that. It is a modern day segregation. We have one side is going to be vaccinated people. One side is going to be unvaccinated people, right? There's an article from Greece how they're going to make unvaccinated camps. So if you're unvaccinated in those areas, you have to be sent to a camp. Sounds like Nazi Germany to me. But I could be wrong. Only thing I know is history. And the only thing I know is how to forward think. Because I can see forward. I can see 5 steps ahead, 10 steps, 20 steps ahead. Not everyone can do that, right? That's why not everyone's a leader. And we talked about leadership, I believe, last week. We had a whole workshop on leadership. Because if you can be a leader, you know how and where to go. Some people don't know how to do that. That's why some people are not leaders. That's why some people can't be leaders. That's why people follow rather than lead, because it requires more work, more effort to lead than it does to follow. Think about it. If someone asks you to do something, you probably say, okay. But if someone asks you to do all of the planning, you're like, oh, it's a lot of work. Got to make a lot of phone calls and have to make sure everything works out. It's a lot more work to be a leader. And now we have this modern day segregation from the vaccinated to unvaccinated. And there is a lot of hate going on with, like, I believe Asians and Blacks, right? So if, like, I think there's a story of an Asian woman who was pepper sprayed, right? And they're talking about racism. Talking about critical race theory is not going to fix racism. The way we fix racism is by teaching our children, the younger generation, we're all one people. Doesn't matter about their color of the skin. It matters about their character. It matters about who they are on the inside. And when you teach them, it matters about, like, what's going on the inside. It's important to identify this key aspect. And that aspect is who they are as a person, because they might have different ideals than you. They might have different religions than you. They might have a different opinion than you, but it doesn't make them any less of a person that you can hold as a friend, a person you can trust, a person you can admire. Because opinion is just a self-belief. And we live in a world where our beliefs need to be acknowledged, and we need other people to acknowledge them. And if not, that's a problem. And that's why we're having a problem with COVID, climate, racism. All that stems from people having an entitled mindset, people not able to follow their own beliefs. Because deep down inside, we all want to be treated well. And we understand that if we want to be treated well, we need to treat others well. But society is telling us if they don't do what you do, they're an enemy. And as long as we keep doing that, we're going to keep on creating enemies. We're going to keep on having these turmoils in society, in the world. So how can we turn that around? And I wish I can say, head over to revenconcepts.com and we can work on that. But that's not the truth. The truth is going to be, you need to make up that choice for yourself. You need to become a leader of your life and acknowledge what you want in your life and then go after it. And if someone is going to limit you, you choose if you want them in your life or if you want to limit how much you interact with that person. So if someone, for example, talk about vaccine, then we talk about race. If someone is unvaccinated and you don't want to hang around unvaccinated people, you don't have to, right? It's your choice. And they could be a great person. Not a problem. But at the same time, you can't mandate someone to do something. Government or no government, that's illegal. It goes against the Constitution. And you might say, oh, no, it doesn't go against the Constitution. It does. Because now we're basically saying, unless you do what we say, your livelihood does not pertain to us. Literally what it says. Why do you think we have a Second Amendment? And it's not to fight back mandates. It's to fight back governments that try to oppress the people. What happens when the government says you can't work if you're not vaccinated? Oppression. I'm thinking 5-10 steps ahead. And we don't see that yet. People don't see that yet. And you might think it's controversy, conspiracy talk. It is common knowledge. History repeats itself. We see it all around the world. It's happening right now. There's no secret. We just have to pay attention. My name is Michael Rearden. If you have any questions, email me coachingthesession@gmail.com. Until then, everyone have a great weekend